Hi, I'm Nick Cosentino, and I'm a Principal Software Engineering Manager at Microsoft. In this video, I wanted to talk to you about 3 things that I'm very thankful for doing starting out as a junior software engineer. In a previous video, which I'll link up here if you haven't seen it already, I talked about 4 different things that I would do differently, so I wanted to counterbalance it with 3 things that I thought worked out really well. If that sounds interesting, just a reminder to subscribe to the channel and check out that pinned comment for my courses on Dome Train. Starting out with number 1, it's the advice I give to people all of the time still because I have seen this work really well for myself, and that is building projects. For me, this meant that I was building just fun things on the side. I wasn't trying to make a business out of what I was doing. I wasn't trying to make the next Facebook or the next whatever. I was just trying to have fun with the stuff that I was building. I have one of my pet projects, which is a little role-playing game. It kind of looks like Pokemon. I've been building it over the past 20 years or so on and off. It's one of the first things that I started building. Now, I've rewritten it probably a million times, it's never going to be finished, but it was something that I could always go back to and try programming patterns out. I could apply different design patterns, I could try working with a different database technology, I could port it between different game engines, I could practice refactoring. I essentially had this infinite playground that I could just keep building stuff in, and for me that was really enjoyable. But that's the other thing that I wanted to mention, because if you're trying to hear this as advice for yourself, I understand that not everyone, number 1, has time to do this, and number 2, not everyone knows what they want to go build or can go find something that they're aligned with. On the first part, if you find that you don't have time, I do recommend just trying to look at your priorities and seeing if there is something that you can trade out. I do understand that some people are literally maxed out on all of the important stuff in their life. You might have a job, you might have a family, you might have kids, you might have school on top of that. You might be working multiple jobs and trying to get into programming, right? I get it. But if you are someone who has other hobbies and stuff on the side, time that you're dedicating to other things, you might be able to see if you can start carving back some of that just to be able to dedicate a little bit of extra time to building things. Now, if you're not sure what to build, there are plenty of options, and one of the best things about LLMs these days is that you can ask them questions about this kind of stuff. If you have no idea where to start, you can just ask ChatGPT for some ideas. But what I would recommend is trying to find something that you're interested in. What I mean by that is like hobbies or, things that you like doing outside of programming. If you like listening to music or watching a TV show or playing certain video games, why don't you go build something that's related to that? It might feel a lot more interesting, because I find if you're not enjoying the process, what you're trying to build, when you start hitting roadblocks, you're going to be sitting there going, I don't even like doing this anyway. Why am I making myself do it? But if you find it's kind of interesting, at least aligned to one of your hobbies, it might feel that you're excited about solving the problem. That's what I would recommend. My experience building projects on the side meant that I was able to have a lot more time just actually practicing building software. That meant when it came time for even my first internship, I was able to go demonstrate that video game I mentioned. I got to bring it for show and tell to the interview and show the founder of the company what I had built. There were plenty of things along the way that I could go experiment with, building mobile apps and different programming languages and all sorts of things that gave me different skills that I could go bring back to the workforce because I wasn't applying them every day on the job. But when certain situations came up, I did have some of that experience just from playing around on the side. This is going to bring me to my second point that I think worked out really well for me, and it's going to sound counterintuitive, I get it, but hear me out, and that's going to be reinventing the wheel. This is advice you hear the opposite of all the time, right? Don't reinvent the wheel. If something's already there, don't waste time on it. You want to be building on top of it. If there's a database that exists that's very performant, why would you go try to go write your own? You can go leverage the one that teams of people have put years of effort into. It's gonna work really well. If you go start your own, it's probably not gonna be as good for a very long period of time, if ever. So why is this advice, and why did this work well for me? Well, I think it's special advice, and I think it's contextual, so hear me out on it. I think it's actually beneficial to try building some of these things on your own from a learning perspective. And I don't mean trying to do it to go put it into production, but I do mean if you're building stuff on the side, if you're like, I wonder how a database works, try building one. For me, it was about networking. So there were all of these different libraries that you could use for communicating between two different programs. And I said, I want to try building my own thing. So I would work with sockets, and then from there, I would build messaging libraries over top of them. So kind of like RPC calls or other messaging mechanisms. But I spent a lot of time doing that because it was interesting, and I got to learn a ton. I even built my own UI frameworks, kind of like WinForms, but in some game engines. And did I have to do that? Absolutely not. There were plenty of different libraries I could have used already, but it was a really cool experience to go see how that would work. If I was trying to ship this type of stuff to production, to end users, people were paying me for it, I probably would have approached things differently. But because I was building on the side and I had this playground of sorts, that meant that I could go trying to learn different things that I was interested in. Yes, reinventing the wheel can be really beneficial. You can learn tons of different stuff, and by doing so, you'll probably have a much greater appreciation for the work that goes into some of the libraries and technology that you're using. Maybe on the surface, it seems really simple, and once you start trying to build it out yourself, you'll say, holy crap, there's lots of stuff I didn't think about. So I do recommend trying it out from a learning perspective. Finally, something that I cannot recommend enough is internships. And yes, I get it. Depending on your journey, you might say, well, Nick, I don't have the opportunity for that. But this advice is especially important for people just getting started and they're not sure which direction to go in. So if you're thinking about a self-taught path, a boot camp, college, university, for me, something that worked really well was going to university and picking a program that had internships. Now, you're able to do this without going to university. It's totally possible. But for me, that was one of the elements about the program I picked that I really liked. If you have the opportunity in whatever path you take to be able to do some type of work before you're fully employed, maybe it's volunteer work, maybe it looks like something else, but if you have opportunities that look like internships where you can be learning from other people and kind of doing what looks like real work, I think that it is such a game changer, and I would not change any of that in my career journey for anything. For me, this meant that I had 2 full years of work experience by the time I graduated. That was 6 different internships, and I could have done them at 6 different companies to go look at all sorts of different things. I did go back to a couple multiple times, and that meant that I was able to stick around a little bit longer and see some products and other things evolve in the time that I was there. But having 2 full years of work experience meant that by the time I graduated and could go apply, not only did I have a little bit more on my resume that I could add, but it also meant that I had truly had hands-on experience building software at companies with teams. But again, if you're not sold on going to college or university, or you're in a program that does not have something like internships or a co-op program, like I said, there are lots of opportunities, and even just being able to volunteer and making sure that you can try to build software with other people. It could even just be a project where you go collaborate on the side and try to put some stuff together. I think this kind of thing where you're working with other people and you have closer to a real working dynamic going on is incredibly beneficial. While this kind of sounds like it's related to building projects on the side, the point that I want to call out about this and what makes it more real is that you're going to be potentially working in teams, right? And you're going to have different constraints that you might not otherwise. Building something on the side just for fun, you might not really have a deadline. You might not have customers or real users to worry about. But in these other scenarios, you have some of these more realistic constraints starting to get imposed. And when that happens, you have to get a lot more creative with how you're building software. So I think that it's an awesome opportunity. And like I said, I wouldn't change it for anything else in my career journey. Those are 3 things that I thought worked out really well for me starting out as a junior software engineer that I wanted to offer up to you as advice if you're just getting started. Now, if you want to hear about how I progressed through my career getting to a principal level software engineering manager, you can check out this video next. Thanks, and I'll see you later.